Like, I actually had a rant yesterday on my Instagram.
Me too.
Like,
No. You think it's bad, but it's inconvenient for your life
yeah,
to do anything about it.
be able to visualize a better future, but also realize that this is the closest we've ever been. This is Food for Action, the show where we share a meal with inspiring activists. We have conversations for liberation around delicious food that not only sparks our taste buds, but also our curiosity and passion for change. The meals we share are more than just sustenance. They are the building blocks of community, the symbols of cultural identity, and the fuel for resilience. In the heart of our show, we recognize the power of food as a catalyst for revolutionary movements. So prepare to be inspired, educated, and perhaps a little hungry for change as we serve up a feast of ideas. Welcome to Food for Action, where every bite brings us closer to a better world. And remember, please hit that subscribe button, and that will help our channel grow. So, why did you choose this spot?
So I've lived here for about 6 years, and this is just a local cafe. It's cheap and cheerful. It's run by some local Turkish people, and they've just always been good to me. So just thought, give them a bit of business.
I love that. I love that it's like a Turkish family running like proper English
Proper
breakfast
English
place.
fry up, greasy spoon style. So not the healthiest, but tasty.
And tell me about yourself. What do you do? How would you describe yourself to someone?
I am an animal lover. I think firstly and foremost, like massive dog lover, into rescuing dogs. My professional life, I'm a lawyer.
Oh, cool.
Not really. Just a boring.
I studied law as well.
you?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer.
It's not as cool as what people think. You kind of just
Yeah.
sit there all day reading documents and drafting stuff. Yeah, my parents are from Hong Kong and China, but I was born here. And yeah, I've been in West London my whole life.
Have you always been an activist, or was there like a moment where you kind of became more politicized?
I think my personality's always been calling things out, seeing something's wrong. So not so much being an activist, but as a child, like if something didn't look right, I'd straight away be like, that's not right, and call it out. And maybe that was like activism in the making. I wouldn't say I've been like chained myself to like Parliament or 10 Downing Street or anything like that. But
yeah, anyway.
Yeah, but I think in the last kind of 15 years, I've probably done a bit more than before. Just becoming more aware of what's happening in the world, how the West has its propaganda, the news outlets, how it's controlled and restricted, and trying to, I don't know, help to be that small step to make change. And I think it's important that every person does it. And, you know, there's no good complaining about something if you don't actually stand up for what you disagree with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So do you feel like there's been a rise in activism? Do you feel like at this moment in time, do you feel like there's some sort of shift happening?
The positive side of me thinks yes, because I think social media kind of just allows everyone to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Good and bad. I mean, it's not a great thing, but it's good in the sense that it brings a lot of people to see what's happening in the world. And if you look at like the protest that's going on, I think this time round it's consistently gone on for 5 months, every couple of weeks, more so than before. And even with like the Black Lives Matter movement, there were more protests happening then than there were before for Black people.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's kind of like, oh, just because there's a shift, everything's perfect. I think we've got a long way to go, but hopefully it's a step in the right direction.
I think having that access to information, and on such a like quick basis where like literally things are being live streamed, and you find out about them within like the hour, if not the next day. Yeah. So I feel like that's like very powerful. But this is like, again, this is like independent media. So these are still like relatively small avenues compared to like big mainstream media outlets.
Yeah.
So do you think mainstream media has like the same power it used to have? Or
I think mainstream media probably doesn't have exactly the same power that it used to have because, I mean, let's rewind back to just as an example, like let's say the Holocaust, right? There was no social media, no internet, none of that. No, people didn't even have telephones in the house, some of them. And I don't even know, like, they had probably black and white TV.
Yeah.
But it probably had one channel. And like,
Remix.
Sorry.
It's fine. It added to the vibe.
But yeah, so like I think Hitler's campaign and his propaganda was a lot more easy. It was a lot more easier, for him to convert the whole nation into Jewish hating people, for example.
Yeah.
To do the fear mongering from one avenue, one newspaper. So I think now mainstream media, it is harder for them because of social media for us. And also you've got the Al Jazeera's, you've got Russia Today, you've got all these different news outlets. However, it still infuriates me because, BBC, the main one for the UK, I can't even bring myself to watch it, and I see clips and it's awful.
Yeah, it's pure gaslighting.
It's gaslighting, it's lying to people, it's changing the narrative from being victims to being terrorists, like everyone's apparently a terrorist. So
yeah, especially with Rishi Sunak's speech, like
this guy. Yeah. Yeah. Last night. Yeah.
Infuriating.
Disgusting. He's just disgusting.
Yeah.
And like what he said was so contradictory because he's like, you people who are demonstrating, you're affecting our democracy.
Yeah.
Democracy is about the people speaking.
Right. So 1 million people on the streets, is that not democracy in action? Are you not listening to what the people have to say?
So you're talking about democracy, but then you're like, we're increasing police powers.
Yeah, exactly.
To shut you guys up because you guys are causing Jewish people fear. So
what about the literal genocide?
Yeah. What about that, right? Apparently it's not happening to him.
Yeah.
Is it okay to eat?
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry.
I also might have like a few bites in between. But are there any hobbies or things that you do to kind of unwind and keep yourself grounded to keep going in this fight?
If I'm being completely honest, I think the last 5 months have been a real struggle with keeping myself grounded. Like I've spoken to Aman like before just about how it emotionally affects me a lot now. And you see something, you can't unsee it. You're dreaming about it. You're talking to friends about it. You're talking to activists about it. You're getting angry. You're getting sad. But for me, I'm just trying to go to the gym, do some boxing, like release stress that way, and anger out that way. Because I think it's just really strong emotions, but like loads of different emotions, right? Really strong emotions with sadness, heartbreak, grieving, injustice, like feeling that someone's being bullied and you can't really help them.
Yeah.
Getting angry that someone's being murdered. There's all these emotions, right? So I think, keeping yourself busy, going to the gym, keeping fit. I say that whilst I'm eating this, but just trying to generally like get some sleep, eat a bit better. And it sounds really ridiculous to eat healthily, but I really think like if you're eating like enough fruits and veg, getting enough sleep, water, it helps as well with your mental well-being. But I think everyone's going through a really crap time right now, right?
Yeah, it's not normal that we're witnessing. It's like witnessing all this at this scale for 5 months straight.
And I don't know what people call it. Is it secondhand trauma or something? But it's like when you keep thinking about the same images or video footage over and over again, and then you sit there by yourself and I don't know, like what do you do? Do you cry? Do you shout? Do you scream? And it hurts you.
Yeah.
And then when you get people who kind of make it seem like it's not that important, I've had people ask me, oh, but you don't have any ties with Palestine. You don't have ties with Israel. Like, why does it bother you so much? And I find that quite demoralizing because it's like, why doesn't it bother any like people as much as the activists? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I find that happens to me as well, where people will be like, well, it's far away, it doesn't affect you. But we were talking about this earlier and we were saying that they call it crimes against humanity for a reason. So it doesn't matter if it's like impacting me physically.
Yeah.
It's it's actually seeing all those images and all of these crimes being committed, like, without any shame, is a crime against humanity. Like, it's psychological warfare.
Yeah.
It's kind of like bragging, like, oh, look what we're doing and we're getting away with it. And therefore, it's a feeling that the whole of humanity is attacked, because they're like, it is just by pure luck that I'm on this side of the screen and the other person is on that side of the screen. It's literally pure luck.
Exactly. And that's what, like, I've been telling like friends and people who seem to argue against it. It's like, you have this privilege, right? Sleeping in the comfort of your own home, buying food that you want. The only problems that we have is like, am I gaining weight? Am I losing weight?
Yeah,
like, that is literally our privilege, that we can care about our physical attributes to go to the gym. These people don't have food. They don't have parents. You know, children are being bombed. Their like skulls are like scattered all over the floor. So when you have that privilege, and it just so happens, as by you, what you said, by luck, that we're on this side of the world, is even more important for us to be a voice for them. Like, I just don't think, if you've got privilege, it's not good enough to sit in your privilege and not do anything. And you don't have to like go out shouting and screaming and be the loudest voice. There are introverts, right? But like the introverts who boycott, who sign petitions, who write to their MPs.
There's a million different ways you can get involved. Like,
and it's not
so
just protesting. So yeah,
that's just one facet of it.
Yeah,
I've got a really good quote for you.
Go on.
It's to do with food and also activism, and it goes, when we're not hungry for change, we're too full of privilege. I feel like that really applies these days.
Oh my God, who said that?
I don't know.
Did you make that up?
No, that's really good. I'm not going to claim it.
It's really good. When you were,
I've seen it online somewhere. But I read that and I really like felt it, because it was such a powerful statement, which is very true in this time where people, I think, like, the way society has been built and the way we've been conditioned is that, well, it doesn't affect you. Why would you look at it? And that's, it's so far removed from like this idea of community that, it's like
you're just for your own people. And that's it. And I think it's ironic because everyone cared about Ukraine, right? But then you had the journalists who literally said, these are not people from Africa.
I remember that.
You know, they're not people who are immigrants or whatever they said, refugees. These are our brothers and sisters with blonde hair, blue eyes. And I think that, to be honest, says it all, right? Like, they're browner than us. They're, you know, it doesn't matter.
I remember when that was on TV. I actually was shocked but not surprised that was the statements that were being made.
Same. I agree. But that's a really good thingy. What do you call it?
Quote.
I was gonna say phrase. I was phrase.
So, like, you touched upon how different people can do different things, like within the movements. So, like, for me personally, I'm a chef, and I find my way of bringing that to activism, like, you would think being a chef and being an activist, there's nothing in common. But I can say, like, when the flower massacre happened the other day, like, to me, for someone that works like nearly daily with flour, like, it's heartbreaking to me that like, an ingredient that I use on the daily, I can't look at it the same anymore, you know? And that's like my perspective as a chef. I've met people who like, there's groups out there like Ravers for Palestine. there's so many groups out there. It's amazing. Ravers for Palestine, Tech for Palestine, Film Workers for Palestine, Health Workers for Palestine. And whatever sphere you're in, there's always some sort of avenue where you can relate it to your own life.
No, I 100% agree. I don't really have a particular group, I guess. I think for me, maybe it's kind of stemming from being British but coming from like a Chinese ethnic background.
Yeah.
Growing up and like people always asking you, but
where you really from? Where you really from?
British, no, but where you really, and I don't know, just always feeling a bit different and not really feeling English, as you'd call it.
Yeah.
And seeing kind of my parents kind of, I wouldn't say fully suffer, but like, you know, some racial discrimination against my family, against me when I was a child. Nothing crazy, but it made me open my eyes up a bit of like to how different people treat people, but how people treat people differently because of how you look. And you're not born that way, it's taught, right? So it's all their parents, it's people who've got this kind of prejudice against you. And
just
you know,
perpetuating that way of thinking to their children.
And you know, it shows with, you know, what's going on with Israel and Palestine, because Palestinians are dehumanized so much that like it, their lives don't even matter. So to any Zionist is like, oh well, if Hamas didn't do this, these poor children wouldn't die. But they don't say poor children in a way where these children are human beings and these poor children who didn't have to die. They just say it as like a passing flippant comment, and you can tell that there's no kind of attachment to them being human beings, that they matter. They're just Arabs. And like, or they'll just say, why don't other Arab nations take them? And I don't know, it's a hard pill to swallow. So I'm just like, I'm going all over the show. So you're probably gonna have to do some cutting of this. I haven't done this before.
It's all right. There's no structure to it. But yeah, like dehumanization is actually like an important step for genocide. Like you can't have genocide without dehumanization.
You can't. Yeah. I think you're completely right.
Yeah.
Because if you can successfully dehumanize an entire people,
you can justify their killing, basically.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter that they die. And it's like they're just collateral damage. And that's it. Collateral damage is, there's nothing else attached to them. No names, no identities, no families. And that's something that I can't really, I struggle with that, because like I look at everything that's going on and I can't actually grasp how much pain each person who's lost someone, who's died, who's lost family members, I can't fathom how great that kind of grievance is, like how much pain they must feel to have your whole family bloodline just wiped out. And there's nothing you can do. Like there's nothing you can do. You can't shout about it because the IDF will just kill you too. It's just, really difficult one.
Yeah. How do you think we can engage more people to come, like to engage politically? Like there's a huge number of people protesting. Like for me, someone that's been like in and out of the activist scene for decades, to me, the movement right now is probably the biggest it's ever been. But it's always a good thing to bring more people into it.
Yeah.
How do you think we'd be able to do that?
That's one I've been struggling with, to be honest, with you, because like I'll go on my social media, I'll talk to friends, and sometimes I battle in my head, shall I try to make them feel bad about themselves? You know, you have this kind of thing where you're like, should I talk to them and try to make them feel bad about themselves and talk about their privilege and say that it's not acceptable that they don't do something? Or do you try to do it in a more gentle way where you give them the knowledge and the tools and like the information to say, this is the no thanks app, this is the, I don't know, leaflet, like if you can, like please boycott this and that. I think for me personally, I know this might not be right for everyone, but I think it's to call people out on being silent.
Yeah.
I think that's like a big thing, because majority of people, not like crazy people, but they would agree that a genocide is messed up, that Palestinians are being slaughtered, right? But they are still the same people that are going to McDonald's. They're still the same people going to Starbucks, buying their Costa because there's no other coffee shop down the road. And it's all about flexibility for them and convenience, right? So I think it's about calling them out and say, if what Israel's doing doesn't sit right with you, you don't have to jump into the middle of the street and scream. But there are little things that you can do to show that you don't agree with that. And one of the things is boycotting. And that's a massive thing, actually, you know. Money speaks, right? Lack of money speaks. So, and I've done that recently with a couple of friends. I'm not sure they liked it too much, but I called them out for it, because
I think that's important though.
Yeah, and like you know, to say that you're accountable too. Every single person's accountable. And you don't have to be aggressive in your approach, but just say to them, we all have a responsibility, little or big, to boycott, to speak out about things. And if it really hurts you seeing what you see, then you should also do something about it.
Boycotts have been like really powerful throughout history. Like it's not just something that's been created recently. It's literally like such a small thing you can do in your day-to-day life.
And the impact is great.
Huge impact, yeah.
The impact's almost bigger than us shouting on the streets.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it's about
for sure.
And like the amount of people I think that have said to me in the last 5 months, or even before this, like previously when I was protesting, they would say, yeah, but what difference would it make? Oh, I'm just one person. Like, what difference would it make if I boycotted, if I protested, if I like set myself alight on fire? And I'm just like, fine, you can't make a difference.
But as a collective,
yeah, there's strength in numbers, and
exactly.
If a billion people said exactly what you're saying and didn't do anything, then there would be no change.
Yeah.
But if every single one of you stopped, you know, saying that and stop kind of like taking, to me, it's a lazy attitude. It's lazy, isn't it?
Yeah, because this is like realistically, boycott is like the laziest form of protest. You literally have to do nothing.
And literally, and there are like layers of boycotting that's like from easier to harder. So I completely understand there are people who've got mortgages with Barclays.
Yeah, of course.
They can't, they've got children. I get it. They can't just change banks, fine. But
every little helps.
Costa, like those sorts of things where you pop out to get a coffee, pop out to get lunch, those are the easiest things to boycott. And then after that, I would say it's like your household goods. If you've got children, you might need to buy certain products for the kids. You can still find different things, but maybe that's a bit harder than the Barclays. But like the high street kind of shops, restaurants, cafes, there's no excuse. Like, yeah, there's just no excuse. And it makes me like, I don't know if you can tell, it makes me angry when people...
Same. I was at the beginning of this, I was like very patient with people. I was like, oh, fine. And now I'm like, you know what, we're 5 months in now. I need to call you guys out because I feel like I actually had a rant yesterday on my Instagram.
Like no, I actually did. I didn't do a video of myself, but I was like,
oh no, I went full on video, and I was like, mine was pretty much like, to the people that are privately messaging me that have yet to speak out on what's going on, and that are messaging me and that are like, oh my God, it's so sad what's going on. Like, I called them out and I was like, I don't need your pity. The world does not need your pity. At this point, we need action. Like, it's been 5 months.
Yeah.
It's been 5 months.
100%.
What more do you need to see?
Oh my God.
What more do you...
I literally had the same rant, but I typed it out in anger on my phone. I was like, let me do some passive aggressive. But
I know the one. I've been,
like, every photo and every live footage we've seen speaks for itself. We don't need to see more. And we don't need people to say something like, this is awful. If you're
we know.
If you're going to say this is awful and it's not backed by positive steps to,
exactly,
you know, then what's the point of you saying it?
Yeah, I went a step step further, but now I look back and actually a lot of people like reposted it. I was like, oh, I guess a lot of people a lot of people resonated with it, because I was like you're either like, I don't understand the fact that you've not taken action, and because you know what's going on. So either you're paralyzed by what you're seeing, that like you're distraught by what you're seeing and you're paralyzed into inaction, which is fine. I understand that, but you know, with time, you kind of you like grow from it and realize, well, this is the only way forward. Or like I said, or are you just watching this as some sort of sick entertainment? Like, really, which one is it? You can't like silently just watch all of this. You can't
say it's awful and then support it. Like, it doesn't make sense. Those don't go hand in hand. And like, I'd go a step further to be like, it's not just you're paralyzed or you're just some sick person. You could also be someone in the middle where you think it's bad, but it's inconvenient for your life
Yeah.
to do anything about it because your life matters too much.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got my own troubles. I've got my own family to deal with. I've got my own stresses. We all do. None of us enjoy protesting. No one wants to go leafleting every weekend. No one wants to be shouting on the street protesting, having to wear a keffiyeh to show that you're against genocide. It's not something we enjoy doing. I don't do it because
Oh,
I'm
this
getting
is
a
a
kick
fun
out of it.
activity. Yeah.
Like everyone's got better things to do on the weekend, and that's not me trying to be rude. It's true,
Yeah.
like everyone would rather spend time with their friends and family, but we do it because it matters. So for everyone who just says I'm too busy for this shit, then like I don't accept it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I feel like, you know what, a lot of people don't realize how connected these things are because, like, let's say, like, we haven't got good access to like healthcare, or we haven't got good access to housing, and we're constantly told by the government there's no money for this, like we can't do anything, there's no money for this, and yet we send so much money.
In arms.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that link, I feel, is like super important, so that people realize that actually you are involved, you are like affected by this, so this does affect your life.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, I know about the arms, but I didn't really think about
Yeah.
that. And that's probably a good argument as well to say to people, to convince them to say, you know,
We're all,
you're not happy about the NHS,
yeah,
you're not happy about this and that, but you're happy with your government sending money across for genocide.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all interconnected.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but like the last 5 months for me anyway, because you asked the question of like how do you keep yourself grounded and, you know, better, but that's what I'm struggling with because the last 5 months I like find myself feeling very negative about humanity, like negative about people, my experiences of seeing people stay silent, and just having this kind of very dark view of the world that is not going to get better. And I think
Yeah.
with activism, that's a struggle. Maybe I don't want to speak for every activist, but for me anyway, it's kind of a struggle from you when you finish a protest, when you finish doing a demonstration and whatnot, you have this kind of like surge of like positive hormones. You feel like you're doing good, you're part of the change. I feel like empowered. Everyone's doing it with me. We're all doing in this together, right? The next day you wake up, you look at your screen, and it's like a teenage boy that's been rolled over by a fucking
Yeah.
military tank, or children starving, and like men being shot at when they're looking for flour. And then all of that positive energy that you feel like you're making the change just goes down, and you're like, nothing's changing, nothing ever will. And then you kind of have this torn kind of battle between yourself. It's like, what I'm doing, is it making a difference? And if it's not, how can I deal with that emotionally? And when I spoke to my friend, she made a good point. She was like, you can only try, right? And if it doesn't make a difference, you still stood on the right side of history.
Yeah.
And I never heard that
real.
before, and I just thought, you know what, that's true, because sometimes you might not want to, it's not that you don't want to do it anymore, but you might just think Israel's too powerful, or UK or US, and they're not going to listen, they're just going to shut us up. Like, yeah, different countries and people have been colonized for centuries, right? For years. For And the same people that have their mouths shut is like continuously having their mouths shut on things. So I don't know. Just keep trying, I guess. I don't know if
Yeah.
you feel that way.
I go in stages. I go in stages of like
Same.
grief, sadness, anger, hopefulness. So it definitely goes in stages. I try and remain positive and just think that, like you said, well, at least we're trying to fight towards something.
Yeah.
And like, what's the alternative if we don't? Like,
Then we'll just be one of those who just
yeah,
don't do anything.
exactly.
Yeah. But I think it's, if there's one thing that I've learned over the years, because I think when I first started like with a bit of activism, maybe 15 years ago, or on different things, you know, it would be like you'd go full blast, like I'm doing this weekend, I'm doing that next weekend, and you go really hard. And then after a few months, you get burnt out, and then you just shut it off because you can't deal with it. But now I'm like, realize it's like a marathon, not a race. And
Yeah.
it's probably better that you engage slowly and do bits and pieces here and silently like boycott the crap out of everything.
Yeah.
Because at least that way you won't get burnt out in the same way as,
Yeah.
you know, attending every single protest every single day and then just shutting down one day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a process. It builds up. I think definitely we're kind of used to in our society like immediate results in a way. And I think we have to like keep going and be patient and like be able to visualize a better future, but also realize that this is the closest we've ever been, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. Like the closest we've, and it's not just with, let's say, Palestine, Israel, like with so many other things going on in the world, whether it's Sudan, Congo,
Yeah.
things are being shown on social media. And like, as much as I criticize social media because it's annoying when you have, you know, it can be used for the wrong things, it's also such a good platform to just show people what's going on. And even if you rewind kind of 15 years ago, I mean, I don't know how long Instagram's been about or like
About
Twitter and all of this
15,
stuff.
20
Yeah,
years.
but even if you rewind 15 years ago, maybe when it first started, no one used these platforms for those things, right? They'll just post a little picture of themselves with their family.
Yeah.
And that's it. And now it's like you can see so much on there. And I think you're right, we're the closest we've been to change, and I hope for the better. After what Sunak said yesterday, though, I'm kind of thinking it's like it's all got to implode before it gets better because he's probably going to go ham and police all these powers, but we're not going to stop protesting. So let's see.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the same old tactics if you look throughout history. So,
yeah.
But I feel like the more conversations we have about this and the more aware we are, because like I feel like a lot of people have recently come into the activist scene where they're kind of realizing that going to protests every Saturday at an allocated time slot is not really enough. So they're looking at like different avenues and just educating themselves on like previous social movements, because that's the thing they don't teach us in schools, by the way.
100%. Yeah, because we learn about Pythagoras theorem,
right?
And like things that like I'm never going to use in my life again. They don't talk about learning about life skills.
Yeah.
About standing up for what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
Doing what's right even though you feel uncomfortable doing it, you know?
And then all of our history is whitewashed.
Of course, yeah, because I studied history and it was just about they painted Churchill as this great guy when he was the biggest racist. Like he or you know, they talked about the UK, the British Empire being this amazing kind of, you know, something to be really proud about. And if you look at like colonization of countries, like what actually happened, the murdering of like mass number of people, starvation, raping, taking over land,
all colonial tools.
And you know, it's I think we still need to talk about this. And I don't, sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but I feel like there are some people who are maybe Caucasian or white and they say, oh, stop always talking about race. I feel like we do need to talk about it because what they've done is they take advantage of, let's say, someone of color. There's like colonization going on, racism. They force them into the system where they're below everyone else and they can never rise up. There's a glass ceiling for them right at the bottom. Yet they want to eat their food. So you've got your like African, Caribbean, Chinese, Indian restaurants takeaway. People love that, right? So they take advantage of that. They appropriate that. And then
then ignore the rest of it.
Or then they fetishize. Like, you know, and like we need to talk about that, you know, for someone who's of an ethnic like minority background, like I think it's important that like I admit, like being Chinese, I don't think I've had my life as hard as a black person. But I also feel like a white person hasn't had their life as hard as a Chinese person growing up in London. For sure. And we all need to recognize that there are different levels of racism. And like for example, with like the Black Lives Matter movement, I kind of openly spoke to my black friends and I wanted to give them a platform for my own learning because I know in my heart I never thought of myself as racist. But even during that movement, I questioned myself and challenged myself and said, you realize, is there anything about me that perpetuates any systemic racism that I don't even know about? And, you know, I have privilege in some ways because my black friend spoke to me and he said, when me and my friends go in a car, 5 of us are black, and we're driving into London to go to a party,
Guess what?
always get stopped by police.
Yep.
They've been stopped by police.
Random search.
Yeah, random search in a car for no absolute reason.
Yeah.
As long as they're wearing a hoodie and a tracksuit. They've been stopped by security in shops when they're in big
Yep.
groups. They're not allowed in clubs because they seem rowdy.
Yeah.
And that's a privilege I've had that I haven't experienced that. So I think we can all learn from our own little privilege as well, and how, yeah, different people have different experiences. Yeah.
Tell me your favorite book then.
Yeah, so the book would be, surprise, surprise, is about dogs. It's The Dog Who Dared to Dream, and it was written by, I think, as a Korean author, and obviously translated in English. The reviews I've heard is that the Korean version is so much better, which makes me gutted because I'm reading it in English. But it's literally is a short story. It's one of the most beautifully written books. It's about this dog who's the main character, and they humanize this dog. You know, I mean, because I'm a dog lover, for me it makes sense. But it's about the struggles that this dog has in its life. It's had children. It lives in this like difficult situation with its family. It's owned by this old man. So she's owned by this old man, and it just talks about her struggles and her life journey. And it's super, I don't know, the book made me smile, it made me cry, it made me feel like warm in my heart. And I don't know, for me it was really nice because it's kind of talking about a dog's life, but you can completely resonate with this dog, with your own struggles. But yeah, beautifully written, and I would 100% recommend to read it. It's short as well, it's like 100 pages, so it's no like Lord of the Rings or that Harry Potter
short
stuff.
term commitment. Yeah. Have you got any song you'd like to highlight, or album, or because I love hip hop, like I'm really into hip hop, and I find that really fits into my activism quite well.
Yeah. You know what? This is going to be the boringest answer, and I'm sorry if it's not satisfactory, but
Oh, go on.
like I listen to a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And like anyone who knows me, they're not going to be like, Grace knows music. Like I'm not the friend to go to who knows music. So I'll like listen to some random stuff like from an artist that died in the 70s and love them. You know, I went through my like Nina Simone stage, my Jeff Buckley stage.
Yeah, classic.
I wouldn't say like,
Nina Simone,
oh yeah. And I've watched a documentary on her recently, and she was a very complicated person, but huge respect for her. But she had like a struggle of her own, being a black woman.
Yep.
And you know, being raised in an area where it's just predominantly white, and then kind of rising to her stardom. But to answer your question, sorry, I don't. And like, if I was to say like an artist or an album, I don't think it would
That's right.
very respected. Like, I just listen to anything.
Any documentaries that you could recommend? Any documentaries that you watch and you were like, whoa, everyone should watch this?
Oh man, I'm gonna come across like the sad animal lady.
No, but animal liberation is kind of relevant.
Yeah. So there's one documentary that I previously saw on Netflix, and it's called the My Teacher the Octopus, or
Yeah, My Octopus Teacher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it was just amazing. I didn't know how intelligent octopus
They are incredibly intelligent.
Yeah. And I think the guy who narrates, and you know, it's his documentary, isn't it? He just does this amazing job of capturing the life of an octopus, his friendship with the octopus, but also his respect for wildlife. Like not once did he interfere, and I think for me that was the most touching thing, because he protected this octopus. And for people who love animals or who try to understand animals, it's like an amazing thing, because this octopus actually connected with him, reached out to him, knew him, recognized him, played with him, you know, like reached out her little tentacles and whatnot. And he had this like immense deep love for her, and he went to visit her every day. But what touched me the absolute most was after she like had all her eggs and she was dying, and then she got eaten by, sorry, after she laid her eggs, and she was then like really old, and then eaten by sharks and different fish and crabs, I think. he didn't interfere. And for me, that was the most touching thing, that he loved this thing so much, but he respected nature enough to not
the course
jump
of
in.
nature.
And I don't think I've got the courage to do that. So when I watched it, it was just something that I thought was not just amazingly done, but there's a lot to learn from it, like from humans as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you watch it then?
So I have like a huge interest in marine life because I worked at sea, and that documentary in particular, I went on a deep dive and learned so much about octopuses, like octopi.
Yeah.
That's the like plural. But if you put an octopus in a jar, it's smart enough to figure out how to
Open the lid. Yeah.
unscrew it from the inside. Also, another fact that I found out is that you don't see them in aquariums that much, and that's because they actually escape all the time.
Yeah, they're really good at that.
Yeah, they're smart creatures, man.
Really, really interesting. But yeah, for me, that would be my, I don't know if it's my number one documentary, but something that definitely
Touch you,
kind of
yeah.
like really touched me, and I just had this crazy respect for the man who kind of narrated, and it was about him and the friendship that he had with this octopus. Like, I'm also like a big fan of true crime, but maybe we'll pop that one for this conversation. And
Do you feel like you can watch it now, though?
you know what? I feel like I can, because I'm not one of those sick people who like watch true crime to know the gory details. Like, I don't, that's not what I like about true crime. Like, what I enjoy about true crime is the psychological, what do you call it? Oh, my mind's just gone blank. Like, to work out psychologically why people are the way they are. And for me, that's an interest. It's like, how we as humans with such compassion can someone who comes from a person, a human being, and they're a human being, how do they end up killing and hurting and committing crimes that that they do? And for me, it's just an interest to know, was it nature or nurture, and why did you become that way? And how did your childhood or what you've experienced impact you as a human being? Or were you just born that way? Is there something inherently psychotic? Like, are you a psychopath? And so I can still watch that, because I don't watch it for the gore or that sort of thing. It's more just trying to understand why people are the way they are, which kind of coincidentally helps when you kind of look at all these interviews with Zionists, and you can just see that a lot about like sociopaths and psychopaths, because the level of manipulation, gaslighting, you could say to someone who's a Zionist, who's very pro-Israel, but all these children died in this way. Look at this video. Look how this child's got half his face blown off. And they would literally say, yeah, but if it wasn't Hamas, this wouldn't happen. And there is no connection with humanity.
There's no empathy there.
No. And I think they really lack empathy. But for me, maybe some of them are psychopaths, but I think they're more sociopaths, where they are brought up and they're created. Like, this monster's created.
Have you heard of a movie called Israelism?
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet.
It's really interesting. So it's like the how Zionism, it's from the perspective of Jewish anti-Zionists, and they explain how you're pretty much brought up from a very, very young age to become a soldier for like the Zionist state.
Yeah,
like a very, very young age.
If you don't agree, you're a coward. Yeah, because I've read a lot of interviews that, well, people go to prison, right? Like, if you refuse
If you,
to
if you,
IDF or whatever this stupid army is called. But yeah, it's like people who go to IDF, they're seen as heroes. They're seen as someone who serves their country.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't want to do it, who believes in peace and like who's a pacifist, they're seen as a coward.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes no sense to me. That's the opposite. But yeah, that's on my like list to watch that.
It's really good. It makes you realize as well that the Zionist lobby puts all this money around the world to pretty much recruit kids from kindergarten to want to be soldiers at the age of 18, which is like,
it's not
so young. It's like,
it's crazy. But you can draw like parallels with like so many dictatorships, right? Because if you look at Mao, dictator in China for communism, kids started young to learn about communism, and like if you talk badly about communism, there was such severe repercussions. And like I know we keep going back to like Nazism and like Holocaust, but
You have to draw the parallels, though.
and like Hitler and his whole team of like Goebbels, Himmler, all of them, they all did the same thing where children were fed lies from such an early age.
Yeah.
Like, Jewish people were seen as rats, they were seen as dirty. That you had to fear them, and there was kind of dehumanization back from when you're a child, so that when you grow up, it's completely acceptable that Jewish people are killed and slaughtered because they're actually the enemy.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. If you're taught something from such a young age, it's harder to break free from it.
Yeah.
As you get older, because it's all you've known.
That's all you've known. And even if you were to break free from it because you had the courage or you were able to, your whole family, your friends, your whole community,
you get completely ostracized.
Which I think, I've seen some ex-Zionists who grew up in a Zionist household and now they're anti, and I've got nothing but respect for them because it's easier for us.
Yeah, of course.
Where we don't have this kind of community to not shut us up, but put pressure on us. We can say what we want. Well, I don't
to an extent.
But we can say what we want and protest and say what Israel's doing is awful. But for some of these people who, I have a lot of respect because it's so hard for them. And they do it and they say it, but their families kind of turn against them. Their whole communities do. And
did you know that like fry-ups were actually like a very posh meal back in the day?
Really?
Yeah. It was like, I'm serious, I'm not making this up.
This is a posh meal.
Because it was like the meal of the gentry, which is like, back then it was a class, there was like the upper class, and then there was the gentry, and then there was like peasants and something else.
Yeah.
But the whole point of it was they would hunt during the day and get like their harvest and whatnot, and then people would come over and the meal would be like, this is what we produced on our estate. So it was like to show off. Look at
how much food I've got. I can't finish it.
Yeah. And then crazy. With time it slowly trickled down, and now it's like
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I really didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Well, cool, but it's a good story.
So it's interesting to see like how it's evolved.
And I guess that's why there are all these different bits on the plate, as what you said. It's like almost them showing
like
off.
Tomatoes, you're like,
look what I've grown, look what I've caught.
That one's pre-range, by the way. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Do you know about the Black Panther breakfast program?
No.
So the Black Panther movement had this thing called survival programs, and it was basically making all these little services and community spaces for people where they could like support the community, basically, because there came a point where they realized that, well, the state hated them. Like it was to the point of we're being persecuted and killed. And they decided to organize within their own communities, and you had businesses donating food, and you had like nutritionists giving advice on like what would be the best nutritionally complete meal, and then they would like offer those meals to kids early in the morning before they went to school. And it started out with like a handful of kids, and then like about a week or so later it was like hundreds of kids, and then eventually it like grew across the country to like 45 states, 45 chapters of the Black Panther movement.
Wow.
And they realized that like the feedback they were getting is that kids are performing better in school, they're not falling asleep because they're getting like nutritionally complete meal, and they're able to focus more. So the results spoke for themselves. And of course the government was like, this is bad, they're radicalizing them. This is dangerous, we must put a stop to this. And really it was just breakfast for kids and a way to like build community. And that put pressure on the American government to actually create breakfast food programs.
Oh wow.
So they did it as a counter thing to the Black Panther movement.
But I do think like I'm not like, well, I am anti-government, but I'm not one of those like, oh, everything's a conspiracy. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's just that you can see things for what they are, right? And like when we're talking about food, it's so interesting because it's like in the US, in the UK, it's let's just talk about America. They will feed kids like high in sugar stuff.
Yep.
Lots of additives, lots of E numbers, cereals with like bright colors, right? Pump them and drinking kind of like milk that, you know, the cows have had like all these hormones and what do you call that thing, that other medication that animals are, antibiotics, that's it. And so they're feeding kids all this crap, right? So sugar levels are high, as you say, they're falling asleep, crashes, diabetes, like obesity, all this stuff. And then they just counteract that with giving medication.
Yeah.
And it's like, but they pump so much money into like all these like food companies, like your Coca-Colas, all of that. They actually sponsor like medical stuff. It's weird. Like I was watching, you know, I don't remember the documentary, but I was watching a documentary about in the US how like the FDA medicine and stuff, how it's linked to all these like companies that sell fast food. And it's almost like kids need to be addicted and humans need to be addicted to fast food and shit. So they keep buying it and spending all this money so those companies do well. But then they also need to have the health problems so that these medical companies can then sell all of the medication. And it's like, and I think people, maybe some people are starting to see it, but it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, because in Eastern kind of medicine, there's obviously there's medication, but for example, being from a Chinese background, there's a lot of kind of like herbal remedies before you get sick. So before you get diabetes,
Yeah, it's
there
all prevention.
100% like before you get diabetes, before you have high blood pressure, we drink like soups with herbs in it, and they're like, oh, this herb's good for lowering blood cholesterol, blood glucose, all this stuff. But you don't even have diabetes at that point. Whereas in UK, it's like, nah, go to town, you're right, and take these 3 tablets. And so I think I know we're kind of going off topic, but I just think the government, you know, and like people who run countries have a lot to answer, like to the crisis that we have with people with health problems, with addiction, food addiction, drug addictions, smoking, alcohol, all of that. And it's like just a monopoly, isn't it? Like just to run the country and the way to run the country.
Well, that's the thing. Like ultimately, like our health is not important to the government. Like as long as you can function to be a working member in society, we don't care about your quality of life. We'll just keep it at that base level.
Yeah, and nothing's about prevention, is it?
No.
Or mental well-being prevention.
No.
But I think also like in society today, everyone wants, I think you mentioned it, they want quick results. So people want like quick fixes, right?
Yeah.
They want like, how can I lose weight the quickest? How can I gain muscle the quickest? How can I perform the fastest? But it's like, it's a lifestyle change that you need to.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's fine, like you can do this like once in a while, but as long as like every single other day, you're eating better, you're taking care of yourself, you're making an effort to exercise and whatnot.
Especially if like you've got a 9 to 5, like eating healthy is, you know, it takes a lot of your time to be able to commit to a good level of nutrition.
100%.
It is doable, but when the alternative is like, oh, just get like a frozen meal.
Yeah. But it's when that frozen meal is cheaper than
exactly.
healthy
like
food.
There's so many levels to it when it comes to food accessibility.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching, and remember, this channel is for you. That's why we want to hear from you. Please let us know down in the comments your thoughts on today's topics covered and who you would like us to eat with next. Also, we really appreciate your support, so please like, subscribe, and share. This will help us grow. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok as well. Stay active, stay safe, stay blessed.